Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to a special presentation of ScaryCast. This show is called Paranormal Down Under. I'm Dr. John. I'm your host tonight, and we got a wonderful guest. We got our buddy from Australia, which knows a lot about the paranormal and knows about the cryptids that are found by many people in Australia. So I'd like to introduce the one and only Jackson Samael. Jackson, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, pleasure to meet you tonight, my friend. Yep, doing very, very well down here. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I want to ask everybody this question. Imagine, because we have a lot of North American listeners, imagine if you were not in America. You're Australia. We know Bigfoot is quite universal throughout the world, but what other cryptids would you see? I mean, we have our usual. We have the Mothman, we have the Lizard Man, we have Momo, we have all kinds of things over here that we're familiar with. But what would it be like to be in Australia? Well, Jackson tonight is going to tell us about the cryptids that we find in Australia. Jackson, thanks for agreeing to be here and do a little instruction for us. Tell us what kind of cryptids we've got over there.
We have many different things over here, John.
Okay.
Yep.
Like what?
We've got many different things over here. I've spoken to you in short before about the bunyip and the yowie. We've also got a waggle, a titlick, a drop bear, devil dragon, a molljwonk. We've got heaps of different things that I'm more than happy to share with you about.
Well, start sharing because I'm ready. I want to hear about this.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, because I'd like to compare some of ours to some of the things you may have there, like with your Sasquatch, the Wendigos, Skinwalkers, Grassman, Mothman, Dogman, Raven Mocker, so on and so forth. So, yeah, this would be interesting.
Okay.
A lot of our stories come from our Aboriginal culture, which would be similar to your American Indian culture there, like, before the white man came. Here they call it the dream time, the time of dreaming. Because back in the day, like, they didn't have any written language, so everything was passed down through story and song through the generations. So it's all stories about the dream time, which is the time of the dreaming down here in Australia, which was like, back in the time of the ancestors and back in the time of the elders. And a lot of these stories come from like 30 to 40,000, even 50,000 years ago. And so I'll start off with one called the Kinnigar, which is half man and half quoll. How it's been spoken about. Like a quoll here is like a native cat species, and it's sort of related to our Tasmanian devil.
We're talking about half person and half cat. Are we talking about a dangerous cat?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. According to ancient tradition, it's a very ruthless killer. It's got the head and the body of a native cat with the arms and limbs of a man. Caused a lot of terror. Many stories of it killing innocent people and animals, down through generations of killing hundreds of people. It's all passed down through story, through the dream time, through the generations. Allegedly, the story is that the native man was killed by an owl and a crow as he came to drink at a billabong, which is one of our local watering holes, and turned him into the first quoll, which is the first native cat. And since then, he's been hunting people.
Been in a bad mood, huh?
Oh, yeah, a bit of a bad mood.
Okay.
Yeah, he's quite of a wild one, that one.
Well, now, do people see this cryptid with any regularity these days?
There have been sightings, but people don't take it seriously. Like, I'm sure the same thing sort of happens there in the States. Like, people come out and say that they've seen something, and they're, people just like, oh, you're either need sleep or you've had too much to drink or this or that, and they just pass it off. But I've spoken to a few people that have seen something very, very similar, and they swear they know what they saw.
Well, yeah, and then the ones that saw it and didn't live to tell the tale, that's another group as well.
That's it too. Yeah. Well, if you don't come back, you can't really tell a story, can you? Like,
I think you hit the nail on the head there.
We have people disappear over here all the time, and there's speculation over, what sort of happened to them in the forest or in the woods, and no one knows. Like, unless you were there yourself and you came back yourself, you'd have the story to tell.
Well, we have a number of disappearances. We have a number of disappearances in the woods over here. So you can, and in fact, we just had that little kid in the state of North Carolina, where I'm very close to, and it was a little kid, a little 3-year-old, who disappeared for about 2.5 days. And when they asked him what happened, it's a 3-year-old kid. He's not quite all with it and everything. He said, a bear.
But 3-year-olds don't lie.
What?
I said 3-year-olds don't normally lie.
They don't know how. And he said, a bear took care of me. Now, we don't know what that means. That could be a tall, hairy something. I wonder what that could be.
Yeah.
It's not a bear. It could be something else, like a Bigfoot, that has reported human emotions, human thoughts, and is known to have helped people. Although that area where the little kid, I believe his name was Casey, where that little kid was lost, was out there near the coast north of Jacksonville, North Carolina. And no real record, they talk about that. There's no real record of any bears out there. Now, I hope I'm not getting the area wrong. I kept reading about Onslow County, and that's where Jacksonville is. And the forests there are not quite what our Bigfoot are used to, that we think of. So I don't know. But as we said, there are a lot of disappearances, and they're documented, and wonder where they went. So could have been this powerful, scary creature.
I would definitely agree with that. Like, here in Australia, like, most Australians consider the Aboriginal Australians as the first inhabitants of Australia, but the Aboriginal people usually consider the Yowie as the first inhabitants, which is quite interesting, as the Aboriginals have been here for over 50,000 years, my friend. And they consider
the
Yowie,
for those that don't know,
they consider the Yowie, which is basically described as your Bigfoot and Sasquatch, been here first. They've been here for at least 60,000 years. And the Aboriginals have great respect for them here because they're so strong. They can run a lot faster. And, they've learnt to live with them over 60 millennia.
Wow. Okay. So we've got 2 down and many to go. What are some of the other scary... Well, we're on ScaryCast. So what are some of the other scary cryptids that you have over there? Okay,
we've got one here called the Moljawunk, which is half man and half fish. It's sort of described as like a merman. It dwells in the Murray River, which is down in South Australia, and they usually hide under large clumps of seaweed. And people that have been taken have been covered with bright red blisters, and some even have a slow, painful death afterwards.
And they have described this part human, part fish thing.
Yep.
Well, what about any recent reports of that one?
Okay, the last known report of those type of injuries were only about 15 years ago. That's what I've said on previous shows with you, like things that have been thought to be extinct for a long time, they've just gone into hiding, and they come out when they need to.
And now you say the result are bright red welts. What was that?
Yep. Bright red blisters or welts all over the body from where it's been attacked, from where the body's been attacked.
Well, that sounds horrible. Do you have any information on that last sighting from the victim?
No, the victim didn't make it.
Okay, I can imagine. Sounds like it'd be difficult to make it from that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, what else we got here? We've also got the Weigel, which is very similar to the rainbow serpent. I'm not sure if people in America have ever heard of the rainbow serpent.
Maybe not. That's not one I'm familiar with.
Okay, well, the rainbow serpent comes from the Aboriginal tribes, like one of the tribes called the Noongar. Said it was a protector of all water, land, and water life and wildlife. And he was that big that when he moved, he made the gullies and rivers and so on and so forth and protected from floods. And what you see of him at the end of the rain is the rainbow, and that is the representative of the rainbow serpent, which is the Weigel. That's another one of the native stories here. That's like an ancient legend, really. But that's how the Aboriginals here described how Australia was back in the dream time. He's quite incredible. What else have I got here? Let's see. We've got the Yarri, which is, they call it the Queensland tiger. It's dog-sized, but it's a cat-like creature with stripes and a long tail. It's similar to a fire collier, which went extinct here about 30,000 years ago, which was a native tiger. And I think it could be related to the Tasmanian tiger that also went extinct here, apparently back in the 1930s. But we've had sightings of them in the last 10 years around the place. So there are quite a few things that are thought to be extinct that still getting sightings, and it just makes you wonder. Cause like I was telling you before, we've got the Blue Mountains here, and they cover, 2,430 square mile, which is a little bit bigger than your Grand Canyon, but it's all forest. And then that mountain range continues for 2,100 miles up our coast, all the way to the north end. And the amount of sightings of yowie and other things in this forest and so forth that cover all this area up the east coast of Australia is quite incredible. Like, most people just write people off, oh yeah, you've had too much to drink, you've had too much. But I've been out, I've done my own little sort of treks and everything, and I've come across yowie, I've come across a few other things that I can't explain, and yeah, I'm a knower, not just a believer.
Wow. So let's take a quick break here, and I want to ask you a question. What is your recent sighting? Tell us about that.
My most recent one was probably about a month ago. I was out trekking just out behind here, where I am in Port Macquarie, and we're out camping, and we're hearing all different sorts of things. We're hearing noises. We're getting things thrown. I haven't told you about this one, John. I've been trying to think of words to be able to put into what how I could explain it, because I've been trying to say this for lunch show, but I may as well tell you now.
Okay.
We're out there camping about a month ago now, and we're hearing things crack out in the bush. We're hearing certain low growls and grunts, like there's no wild pigs or anything in the area that I was out camping. I'm thinking, okay. Turned off the torch inside the tent and everything, and about 20 minutes later, I hear something come crunching up beside me, and the top of the tent got folded down. Like something leant on it or something pressed down on it. I'm not sure what it was. I didn't really want to look at the time because I was in a little bit of distress. Like, I've never had that happen before. That there was that same smell that I described with you and Matt Delph the other night. Like, that was the main reason I didn't investigate at the time that the top of my tent got pushed down. Because, yeah, I just didn't really want to... Call me a wimp, call me whatever you want to call me, but I just wasn't game enough to take a look at that point in time.
I can't say that I blame you. I really don't. About how tall do you think this one was?
Well, the tent was 6 foot off the ground. Well, not off the ground, but 6 foot tall. Like, I can stand up inside the tent. And it was folded down to about a foot above my head.
Mm-hmm. Did the tent show any signs of getting ready to rip or tear from the weight of the creature?
Well, it sort of had like those fiberglass sort of strips in it. You know, the ones that you bend over to give it strength. A couple of those cracked, yep. But there was no actual real visible prints or anything on the outside. They just cracked. And I'm thinking, well, I've gone outside. I was in a clearing. When I thought it was good enough to go outside, I've gone outside. I'm in a clearing. There's nothing within 20 yards of the tent. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And going along with that smell and the grunts and the noises that I heard, like, there's only one thing I can think it'd be to be that high off the ground, be able to push the tent down that far.
Took a lot of strength or a lot of weight or both?
Yeah, both. Yeah, most definitely. And a lot of height. So as I said, the tent's like 6 foot off, 6 foot high. So to be able to get that much weight on top of 6 foot 10.
Leaning against it. The creature was apparently just leaning against it to take a break.
Either leaning against it or trying to squash it. I don't know.
That would be the scary thought. But so now, were you the only one that had a tent up, or did you have a tent mate, or was there another tent right next to you?
No, I was out there doing my own trek.
Now, as I talk to Matt Delph, I'm going to have to shake my finger at you. That going out by yourself is scary. It's not safe regardless.
Oh, it's even scarier here because we aren't allowed to have firearms.
Well, I mean, you just don't know what can happen out there. I mean, whether it's a cryptid or whether you trip and fall and something gets cracked and it won't work. And, oh, my goodness, there's so many scary things that can happen out there. You have to be careful. And I'm sure you are. You're old enough. You've been around and you're still there. Have you ever gotten incapacitated in the woods and had kind of a rough time of making it back? Has that ever happened to you?
I usually try to take care of myself when I'm out camping. I always take a first aid kit and everything else. You know, you need extra clothing and so on. You know, things for survival. I've never really had any bad times. I've been caught out in the bush a couple of days a few times where I've sort of gotten into a little bit of trouble, but genuinely pretty like Bear Grylls. Yep.
Wow. Well, that's good. What could you tell us about your very first encounter? And about how long ago was it, and what do you think it was?
Okay, I've spoken about this on a couple of previous occasions. My first encounter was roughly about 17 years ago I was out at a friend's cabin, and he said, "Oh yeah, we're having a bit of, there's something going on out here, and I don't know what it is, getting a weird smell. This is going on, that's going on. Do you want to come out and see what's going on?" Because he's living there on his own. He was in he was in a converted, he was in a converted dairy bales that was turned into a cabin on about 250 acres, and he's getting all this weird stuff going on. He didn't know if it was just locals coming out and playing tricks on him and so on and so forth. And so he's gone, "Oh, come out here for a few nights and see what you think." And I've gone out there, and I think it was on the second night that a couple of things have hit the side of the cabin, and then we've heard a huge crash. And they've gone outside, and there's two big lumps of wood sitting outside the cabin, dents in the side of the cabin. And these lumps of wood would have been, a good half-inch in diameter and about 2-3 foot long. They'd look like they'd ricocheted off the side of the cabin. We had a 3,000-gallon water tank that was 5 foot off the ground on a stand that was 3/4 full, pushed completely off the stand. And we don't have bears here in Australia. We don't have anything, that possibly do that. Like I was saying before, we had goats and pigs and horses and stuff, but they were all in their stables and pens and everything else. And this thing just got pushed. I don't know what could push a 3/4 full, 3,000-gallon water tank off the stand 5 foot off the ground. You know what I mean? And the smell, like what I described to you and Matt and Rod and Tom and all the other great people that you have on the show, the smell, it was like cross between wet dog, garbage, rotten meat, the worst body odour you could think of. There's nothing that I can honestly think of in Australia that smells like that, or be that big, or that could be that strong to push something like that off its stand. No way.
All right, now here's the important question. Does your friend still live out there by himself?
No, he moved out shortly after that. Yeah, quite shortly after that. He just packed up and I haven't been back to that area for a little while, but I'd like to go and have a chat with the people that are living in the place now and see if they've had any similar experiences. That's the next track. I'd like to go back up to that place and chat with them.
Wow, that's that's a little bit of a frightening experience. Now, when he was out there in the woods, did he ever happen to see anything maybe related to UFOs? Because I know that when people do live out in remote areas, they can see strange lights and things like that in the sky. Did he have any of that type of experience?
There have been lights seen out in that area. This is the area of Mount Warning, which is up in northern New South Wales, up in the northern rivers. It's a giant caldera, like a huge, big, extinct volcano that's about probably, maybe 30, 40 miles across. And it's all bush. And we see a lot of stuff out there, like everything from lights to hearing things that don't sound normal. And, having a few experiences. So I believe that there could be a correlation between those, because we've seen orbs and everything as well, not just up there, but in other areas as well where I've come across the Yowie.
Right. Now, is that caldera active at all, or does it seem to be dormant?
Oh, no, it is very, very dormant. When it did explode, like this is going back millions of years, it was that big that the lava flow travelled over 120 kilometres. It's absolutely huge. The largest point of it now is Mount Warning, which is the largest river in the northern rivers. Largest mountain in the northern rivers, and that's just on one edge of the caldera. It's absolutely huge.
Now, just speaking of geography there, don't you have a number of volcanoes in Australia, active or not? Don't you have a number of them?
Oh, yeah. We have quite a number here. None have been active for, geez, I'd say millions of years. Most of them, been dormant, extinct for that long. But our Great Dividing Range was built from one of the hots that passed underneath the plates here in Australia. And as that hotspot, it's like sort of like Hawaii was built. When the hotspot hit certain parts of the crust, pushed something up. That's what happened here in Australia. They went for 2,100 miles all the way down the coast. So we've got this huge range that separates the east coast from the red centre. And that's why we call it the red centre, because everything east of like the Great Dividing Range is all green and all lush forest and bush and everything, but everything west of that just turns to desert because it doesn't get the water, it doesn't get the,
Yeah.
So this whole range sort of separates the whole green east coast from our central desert.
Okay.
It covers the whole east coast of Australia, yeah. Basically, like, if you were looking at terms here in America, it would probably go from Arizona to Canada. That's how long our Great Dividing Range is.
And, it's interesting. You basically talked about the entire length. I guess that's the length, north-south. I mean, you talked about that being the length of Australia. I mean, we probably tend to think of Australia as like an oval, but it is apparently north-south about as big as the United States, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, if you actually Google it, if you Google Australia in size compared to America, and you overlap it, basically exactly the same size. Yet we've only got 25 million. We've only got 25 million people here in Australia, though. So there's a lot more people than.
We have a few more here. Well, you've got a lot more. You have an inner desert that is uninhabited. Yeah. Isn't it true? And now, again, I'm sorry. I'm not the great geography guru, but isn't it true that the population of Australia is around the coastline area?
Yeah, that is where the majority is, all around the coastline. No one lives in the desert. It gets way too much hot there. Basically the Australian desert in the middle would be like the Atacama. If you know much about the Atacama desert, it's like there's no rain out there. It's just all sand. It's completely arid. The majority of the Australian population lives on the east coast, which stretches all the way from up Queensland, which is our northern state. We've got 3 states down the east coast of Australia. We've got Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. New South Wales would be our most populated state, followed by Queensland, then Victoria. Then it stretches all the way around the bottom through to South Australia, and then up the west coast of Western Australia. And then we've got a little island state called Tasmania as well, and Northern Territory at the top. So we basically all live on the outskirts around the coast. And then, obviously, the further inland it goes, the drier and everything it gets. Like, there's been farmers out west here. Some of them haven't had rain in 7 years, and they're really struggling at the moment. There's a lot of people on the coast, like I was telling you yesterday, up in North Queensland at the moment. Like, they've had 47 inches of rain in just a matter of days, and the dams are flowing up there. Yeah, there's a dam up there at the moment that's overflowing at the moment at 500 gallons a second. So that whole place is inundated. Like, we've got bushfires down south, we've got floods up north, we've got droughts out west, and we've got cryptids running around. So come on down to Australia, you won't be bored.
Well, that's the one continent I have not visited. I've been fortunate to visit all the others, and that is probably the one that I want to visit the most because of all the great lore about that. You've got ghosts just like we do. You've got cryptids. You've got plenty of UFOs, and So anyway, okay. Now, thank you very much, and thanks for everybody for putting up with my geography lesson on Australia as we talk to Jackson Samael about cryptids. So let's get back to our list of cryptids, okay?
Okay, we've got another one called the Yaramayahu, which is an Aboriginal version of Yaramayahu. YARA-MA-YHA-WHO. The Yaramahu.
Okay,
it's
well,
actually an Aboriginal version.
What is that one? It's got a lot of name now. What is it?
Yep, it's an Aboriginal version, a native version of a vampire. Stories come from over 40,000 years ago of a frog-like man with red fur and a large head. Described in the dream time, he's got a large mouth with no teeth and suckers on the ends of his hands and his feet. Commonly lives in fig trees. Sort of hunted unaware travellers that were resting underneath his tree in the shade. He'd jump on them. Was said to feed off the blood of thousands of people. Like, it's gone through generations of the Aboriginals here. They've talked about him. And what he does is, he'll literally hit you with his suckers, drain you of blood, swallow you whole, then regurgitate you. And a lot of the victims were left with an unnatural reddish tinted skin that if you're unlucky enough, he'd swallow you again and again until you turned into one of them.
But he had already swallowed all your blood, so you would be dead, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But in the story, he would regurgitate you out, and then if he kept swallowing you and regurgitating you, you would turn into one.
Wow. That's definitely a fate worse than death.
That's what I'm thinking.
How big was this thing? How tall was it?
Legend goes that he was probably about 7-8 foot tall. And he was sort of frog-like.
Well, I was just thinking. It sounds like some people with bad vision, and this sounds like a Bigfoot to me. And once they got clawed and bitten by the thing and their blood went out, and they were history. I don't know. I'm gonna lump this into the Bigfoot category. Anybody else has any? Anyone else has any ideas or whatever? Please call in 602-753-1738. 602-753-1738. The standard ScaryCast call-in number. And if you've got another opinion or disagree with mine, let me know. All right, so Jackson, thank you for letting me get my opinion in, and let's continue on with the countdown.
Okay, not a problem at all. We've got another one here called the devil dragon. It's a giant-sized prehistoric lizard. Now, I'm sure if you've heard of the Komodo dragon that's in Indonesia.
Yep.
Well, there's been ones here that roam the rainforests. Allegedly went extinct over 40,000 years ago, but it's still blamed for many disappearances of humans. There have been strange identified prints found. So I think it would be possibly a Megalania priscia, which is the largest land-dwelling lizard, twice the size of a Komodo dragon. Now, we have parenti lizards and goannas and everything here in Australia that grow up to 10 foot long. And we have crocodiles that grow up to over 23 foot long. So it wouldn't surprise me if this thing's still getting around out there in the rainforest.
All right, now, is this thing mean? Is it going to come after you in a second?
Oh, yeah, it's mean. Like, if you've seen any documentaries on the Komodo dragon, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't take that. You wouldn't walk up and pat it.
Well, I know some people, they keep them in cages, and they're mean to them, and they make them mean as all get out. There's some who treat them very well, and the Komodo dragons don't feed them. The Komodo dragons are at least pleasant to their owners. They don't try to kill them when they take them out of the cage. It's just, I guess it's just kind of like how you treat any type of a pet or whatever. But the Komodo dragon is not. I actually had a chance to buy one once, and I did some looking around, and I said, you know what, this thing might just be too tough. This thing just might be mean, and I don't want to take the thing out and walk it down the street. Oh, that'd be the worst thing in the world. Have the thing get away from you, and you'd have to go to jail. And you got your Komodo dragon all over the town. It'd be horrible. So
yep.
All right.
Well, the way I see it, like any sort of reptile, if you raise it from an infant, it's going to be like any sort of animal. If you tame it, it's going to be tamed. But me, myself, I wouldn't go out into the wild and find a wild 8-9 foot, Komodo dragon and think that I could just go up and give it a hug. You know what I mean?
Oh, well,
if it's been raised, you're going to be one of those.
You're going to be one of those disappearing cases.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. If it's raised in captivity and has had human contact its entire life, I assume that it would be tame. So that's a big assumption. I would never approach one fully grown in the wild that hasn't had human contact before.
Neither would I, but that's a different story. Wow, you've got quite an amazing list of cryptids there, and a lot of them seem like, in a way, just fairly believable animals that you'd run across, strange animals that you'd run across in the wild. I haven't heard anything quite like our moth, or do you have anything like the Mothman in Australia? Or do you have the Mothman?
Yeah, I've heard of the Mothman. I've read all about the Mothman and the Raven Mocker and the Oklahoma octopus and grassman, skunk ape, skinwalkers, wendigo. I've read all about all those sort of things. Ours are more based on animals that basically were thought to be extinct, but still seem to be out there. What we call the bunyip, which would be similar to your lizard man, and so on and so forth.
Right.
They're all based on ancient legends that have been talked down through story here over 40 to 60,000 years. And so, Australia only got inhabited by Europeans back in the late 1700s, 1788, which is a lot later than there in America. And so all we've had to really go on is stories and their own experiences from when the Europeans actually came here to Australia. But the stories of all these creatures have been passed down for 50, 60,000 years through all the locals here. It's like you can't discount that much history, when we've only been here for a couple of hundred years. And most people live in cities and they don't go out and look at this sort of thing. Like, they don't open their minds to it. I keep coming back to that. If you keep your mind closed and you're ignorant, you don't see what you see. You discount it as something else or pass it off as something else. Or you've got to really go out there and look and keep your mind open.
Right. I mean, that's like what we saw today. It came out on international news. We have a Harvard astrophysicist and a professor who claims that we have been visited by either a relic or some type of alien space probe that came through our solar system one direction, has passed by us, passed by the sun, and is going back out. And, he's getting a lot of complaints from Harvard University and the Smithsonian Institute. He's got a refereed article. That article, is in, I think, Astrophysics Letters, which is very, very credible. It's a very, very credible journal. And just because he thinks it's not of this solar system, and he thinks it's artificial, I mean, he's just catching pure hell, which is not right. I mean, and I liked what he said. He said, everybody, they can fire me, they can do whatever they want. But if someone can prove to me that I'm wrong, I'll be willing to walk back my paper. But they don't want to prove it to him. They just say, well, it's silly that you say we might have a UFO flying through our solar system. Well, you know what's crazy about that? Because at one point in time, if I'm not mistaken, Jackson, they said that the Earth, that you couldn't circumnavigate the Earth.
Yeah, it was flat, and you'd fall off the edge.
Well, I mean, I'm avoiding the flat. Now, I've interviewed Mark Sargent, and I know to avoid the flat Earth argument, but the fact is, they said you can't possibly, if you take off and go west from England or Spain or wherever, you'll be gone, you'll die. Well, sure enough, they ran into something called North America, which had already been discovered by the Vikings, and then they caravan on over to the Orient, and then they take ships from, I guess nowadays, Indonesia, and they fly, and they come over to Mexico and what we call now Southern California. So I mean, people, like the Spanish Inquisition, if you were a scientist and you did not believe in what the church believed, you were tortured and you might be killed. And it doesn't look any different to me now. They say this doesn't follow the tenets of science. Well, then maybe science better change. Because science is not here to prove it. Pardon?
Oh, no, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say science is only here to prove certain things within a certain framework, not everything. So that's what I was saying. I'm sorry, I was getting on my soapbox, but that's what a lot of so-called scientists, if it's not within their framework, well, that's not scientific. It's like death.
That is very narrow-minded. Like I've seen a lot of stuff. Sorry?
No, I was going to say, I'm going to tell you an interesting thing that I realized. You cannot prove death. You can't prove it.
That's true.
Just because the body becomes immobile, starts decaying, you can't prove that that's death. That is a particular state. You can't prove it's death. And what is death? Well, it's the life going out of you. That's what they say. Well, what does that mean? And it's interesting. Science can't prove death any more than they can prove life. It's not within their framework. Right. Because what is life?
Well, that's it. It's always been said that the soul is separate from the body. They're just two things living in harmony.
Well, is it? Well, that may not be someone else's definition. So there you go. You got the definition conundrum. You got all this, and you can't prove death, you can't prove life, can't prove any of that. But yet we sure do have a very robust funeral industry that loves this state called death. We have a very robust world that will sell you products when you get old enough to make money and buy something. And so I guess we call that life. I guess it's life if you can go to Walmart and buy something. Now, do you have Walmarts in Australia?
No, we don't. We only just got a Costco a couple of years ago.
Oh my goodness! A land without Walmart. I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic because I guess I've never had a chance to really discuss Australia with you. I want to come there so badly. We'll just have to have a conference, and then I'll go to a conference and we'll have a blast. But anyway, if you would please, let's talk about my favorite buddy, the guy that I call Lizard Man over here in South Carolina, and he's called the Bunyip over there in Australia, correct?
Yep. Yep, sure is.
Well, and I remember in the lesson you gave us on ScaryCast, you said that the bunyip can either be scaly, perhaps green, or it can be furry. Is that correct?
That's it. Yep. Some describe it as having like a sort of half horse and half alligator. Horns, long tusks like a boar. There's been a lot of different descriptions about what the yowie could be, but that's the most common one.
Now, I was talking about the bunyip. So,
yeah.
But,
The bunyip could be. You're saying it's got like the body of a horse with a horse-like tail, size of a hippopotamus, got a crocodile-type head with serrated teeth, scales. There's been a few different definitions of it, but the ones that stick out to me sound most like your lizard man.
They do to me too, and that's one thing that I want to try to explore as we've got the second annual Lizard Man Festival coming up over here, produced by Dr. John right here. Hey, I'm producing it, and I'm going to be giving a talk, and I'm going to compare the bunyip to lizard man. I'm going to get some slides, and hopefully you can help me on that one. But I think it's interesting that as you describe the bunyip, I can see that mapping directly over to what we call the lizard man. And lizard man is real. Got a new partner in the Lizard Man Festival. She lives in that famous Scapor Swamp, which is what it's called, and she hears something growl that's crazy sounding every night. And she's had damage at her house that she believes comes from the Lizard Man. So, Lizard Man's still around over here. Now, I don't know if you've had many recent sightings of the bunyip over there, have you?
Not in the last few years, but I'm pretty sure he's out there. He's just waiting. Most definitely. It's sort of like, the way that, the way that places get built up these days. As human civilization encroaches, they retreat to, as basically like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yowie, so on and so forth. As their natural habitat gets smaller and smaller, they retreat to the places that they feel more safe and stay away from the enemy.
I guess the enemy is us, right?
Yeah. Well, that's how I'd see it if I was them. If I've been having to coincide with humans for the last 60,000 years, over generations, and seeing my place of habitat getting smaller and smaller and encroached upon, I'd have that fear as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I certainly would, and I think some of North America's more native inhabitants, the Indians, some way. I really believe they did. We just came in and took everything. Right, wrong, left, right, up, or down.
Yeah. I believe the same thing. Like you're American Indians, and like I'm part Navajo. American Indians and the Aboriginal Australians are very, very similar, as they lived in symbiosis with the land. They lived with the land and on land, not. They didn't just destroy the land like what we do. You know what I mean? Like, only took what they needed, didn't destroy anything that they came across they didn't understand. They had respect for it, and they lived with it. Like, that's what the Aboriginals did here with the Yowie and the Bunyip. That's what the American Indians did with Bigfoot and so on and so forth there. They lived in a symbiotic relationship. Whereas, in these last couple of centuries, it's just all been destroyed, really. And I don't really blame these creatures for wanting to hide from us.
Well, I don't either. I mean, they won't. They don't want any part of us taking their habitat, habitat, and all that. So, in a way, it's not fair. And we need to come up with a committee to protect the Bigfoot. So that's some political noise, but I think it's viable, and I just hope Billy Bigfoot's your man, and know that they've got some fans here.
Not just the Bigfoot, but all cryptids, I believe, that still exist and need respect to keep their species going. Like, you know, the world's getting so much smaller now. We've only got, 3,000 tigers left on the planet. We've got even less elephants and orangutans. I mean, it's just crazy the way the world's going. We need to protect all species, regardless of whether we think them of lesser or whatever. Like, everything deserves to live. That's the way I see it.
And if they're dangerous, then that might be a lesson that we need to stay away from them.
Exactly right. They're dangerous for a reason.
That's exactly right. Well, I'll tell you what, Jackson, it has been wonderful catching up with you and talking about cryptids in Australia, talking a little bit about the geography of Australia. I've enjoyed that, and I hope everyone else has. And I'll tell you what, you're such an expert on these things. Well, you can't call it being an expert in cryptids. We call it an enthusiast, or you are a cryptid explorer. And so I've got an idea. If you'd be interested, why don't you come back next week and start hosting this show with me? I think you met the knowledge requirements. You want to start hosting the show with me next week?
That would be an absolute pleasure, John. Absolute pleasure.
All right. Well, I'll see you back. We're going to park ourselves at 11 p.m. on Tuesday night, Eastern Time, United States, which is what? That's 3 p.m. in the afternoon Australian time, right?
Yes. Yep. That's sure right. Yep. That's Eastern Time, Australia, or that'd be 1 p.m. Western Australian time.
Okay. Well, I'll make it a point to put that up on the website. So I'll expect to see you back, and we'll talk between now and then, and see what kind of program we can start putting together. But I think it'll be a lot of fun talking about
most definitely
Paranormal Down Under. I mean, there's so much down there. You got such a rich history, and that's what I like. And I think we'll have some fun guests. So thank you for accepting the offer.
Most definitely.
Thank you. And you will no longer be a guest. You will be a co-host. Unless you want to kick me off, that's another thing. So, look, thank you very much. Thanks to everybody who listened. I hope you enjoyed it. Listeners on Spotify, listeners on iTunes, listeners on TuneIn, and soon to be more and more networks. So thanks a lot. This is Dr. John with my guest, Jackson Samael, and we're going to sign off tonight of the first episode of Paranormal Down Under. Jackson, I'll see you next week.
Yep. Most definitely. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk about Australia and enlighten people over there in your great country and everywhere else in the world. And I look forward to talking a lot more with you and looking at different similarities we have between our cryptids.
Well, we do, and a few ghosts and a few UFOs and all that. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Most definitely.
We'll talk to you next week on Paranormal Down Under.
No worries, mate. Alrighty, mate. You take care.